President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, congratulated people for the wide participation in the elections of Justices of Peace on December 15th and calls for a new popular consultation of the coming year. In Ecuador, 7 people died and at least 2 children were injured after a massacre in the community of Flor de Bastion in the coastal city of Guayaquil. And in Palestinian Resistance Movement, Al-Quds carried out military operations against Israeli gatherings of soldiers and vehicles in Rafah. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro congratulated people for the wide participation in the election of Justices of Peace on December 15th and calls for a new popular consultation the coming year. In Ecuador, 7 people died and at least 2 children were injured after a massacre in the community of Flor de Bastion in the coastal city of Guayaquil. Palestinian Resistance Movement Al-Quds carried out military operations against Israeli concentrations of soldiers and vehicles in Rafah. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, congratulated the Venezuelan people for the wide participation in the election of Justices of Peace on December 15th to coincide with the 25th anniversary of the Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The head of state announced that he will call for next January 26th, the first popular consultation of the coming year, with the purpose of opening 2025 with new communal projects. In declarations to Venezuelan television, he committed that Venezuela will have 4 fixed consultations per year, plus 2 others to approve projects for youth and projects linked to culture. Maduro described as beautiful the election day to elect judges and congratulated citizens elected in this historic day of December 15, 2024, when for the first time Justices of Peace were elected by direct vote of the Venezuelan people. Venezuela continues to build a different kind of government and democracy, a process that was evidenced with the massive turnout for the election of Justices of Communal Peace. Details with our correspondent Gladys Quesada.
Close to 20 million Venezuelans were summoned to the polls once again this Sunday, this time to elect the Justices of the Peace, an instance of the communal power designed to settle minor disputes, family or neighborhood unrest, as well as to maintain order and civility within each commune. It is the first vote of this kind in the country.
Today we are very happy and grateful to God because since very early in the morning we are here in the voting center to exercise our right to vote and thus continue to ensure the peace of our country, Venezuela, as our President Nicolás Maduro has indicated. From here, we can show the whole world that we are a symbol of peace. Venezuela is a symbol of peace, and that is why I exercised my right to vote on this beautiful Sunday.
The opening of the center was at 8 o'clock in the morning without any inconvenience. Thank God we have had enough people coming to the center. So far there are no problems at the voting center.
This process will officially see 15,000 peace justices and their respective alternates elected from among 52,288 registered candidates. Thus, it is in compliance with the provisions of the organic law of the Special Communal Justice of the Peace Jurisdiction approved last November.
This is the result that we are offering the revolution. This is the proof that our President Nicolás Maduro can count on the organized people, on the popular power, on the communal councils, on the local committees of supply and production, and the communes, to continue advancing and transforming our beautiful Venezuela.
With this voting, the nation also celebrates the 25th anniversary of the current constitution approved under the government of late Commander Hugo Chávez. The current leaders know its value.
Hoy se está moviendo el poder popular Today we are seeing the popular power, and 25 years ago we were moving as a Venezuelan people, exercising our right to vote. And we managed to reach 71%, more than 71% voted yes to this Constitution of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which is allowing us today to crystallize that Article 258. We all said yes to that Article 258, which is currently being implemented in each of the territories, when it says that all justices of peace must be elected by a direct, secret, and universal election.
Venezuela advances in the construction of the communal state, the future of popular governance, and the conception of horizontal structures from the people and with the people. Gladys Quesada, teleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
In other news, in Ecuador, 7 people died and at least 2 children were injured after a massacre in the community of Flor de Bastion in the coastal city of Guayaquil. Witnesses said the attack was carried out by hitmen who arrived at the victim's home on motorcycles, broke in and started shooting. 5 members of the family died inside the house while 2 others were chased and later killed. Minutes later, a contingent of national police arrived at the scene to begin the investigation. According to official figures, between January and November, the number of violent deaths fell by 18% compared to 2023. But the number of homicides this year still exceeds 6,000. In Panama, on the 35th anniversary of the military invasion by the U.S. government, several guilds condemned the crimes against humanity committed against innocent civilians. Local media reported that next December 20th, the day of national mourning, will open a window of recognition to the victims of a criminal aggression that destroyed the peace of the country. Likewise, they stressed that the perpetrators of the violation of sovereignty were not sanctioned at the time, stressing that the rule of the aggressors continues. In related news, the lawyer representing the victims recalled that in 2018 they were able to hold Washington accountable for compensating the victims and survivors of these attacks, but this achievement has not been broadcast. President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, arrived in Mexico with the objective of advancing a bilateral agenda with President Claudia Sheinbaum. The Colombian head of state was received by the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Juan Ramón de la Fuente, at the Felipe Ángeles International Airport. On Monday, both heads of states will meet. We now have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The European Union announced the adoption of a new package of restrictions against Russia for its alleged actions of hybrid war against the bloc. The agency reports on the imposition of unilateral punitive measures against 15 Russian personalities, including representatives of security bodies, the Ministries of Defense and Interior, the Federal Security Service, experts and journalists blacklisted for their dubious involvement in alleged war activities against the Union. However, the Kremlin also denounces a joint European attack of economic, cyber and media warfare against Russia. We continue with our news. In Russia, the Donbas Dome air defense system detected and intercepted a total of 138 Ukrainian drones attempting to attack civilian infrastructure in 1 week. The Russian Federal Security Service reports that a kamikaze drone with a homemade explosive device was intercepted near a water supply facility. The bomb squad cut the controls and removed the components for later use. No civilian casualties or damage to infrastructure were reported. In recent months, Ukraine has focused its drone strikes on refineries, fuel depots, and other oil industries facilities in Russia, mainly in the border provinces, but also in areas far from the front line. In France, officials report that densely populated neighborhoods on the island of Mayotte were completely destroyed. and buildings severely damaged by Cyclone Chido. The total number of deaths is still unknown, and it could be several days before the official toll is known. According to the French Weather Service, Chido's winds hit the island at more than 220 kilometers per hour, making it a Category 4 hurricane, the second strongest on the Saffir-Simpson scale. A territory of about 300,000 people had not seen a hurricane of this magnitude since 1934. The French Minister of the Armed Forces said rescue teams and supplies, such as generators and military rations, were sent from the nearby island of Reunion. The cyclone Chido also caused severe damage in the northeastern province of Cape Delgado as it passed through Mozambique. Local media reported that dozens of infrastructures were totally or partially destroyed in the area. Chido made landfall on Sunday with winds of up to 200 kilometers per hour that destroyed roofs, knocked down trees and power poles, leaving part of the province without electricity and water. From December to March, the southeastern Indian Ocean and southern Africa are affected by the cyclone season. And in Australia, authorities on Monday issued fire warnings for several locations in the country's southeast in the wake of a heat wave that will send thermometers soaring to record highs of 47 degrees Celsius. Melbourne will experience a record day of 41 degrees, the hottest since 2020. Authorities also predict that Sydney will see a similar temperature on Tuesday, especially in its western neighborhoods. In southeastern state of New South Wales, temperatures will reach 47 degrees in the towns of Wilcannia and Ivanhoe, more than 840 kilometers west of Sydney. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. The Palestinian Resistance Movement Al-Quds carried out military operations against Israeli gatherings of soldiers and vehicles in Rafah. Al-Quds also confirmed the detonation of 3 explosive devices planted in occupation vehicles during their advance a few days ago. These devices were placed near the Tunisian school and near the Martyrs Mosque Abdul Aziz Al-Khansi locality in Gaza City. They also confirmed the destruction of an Israeli military vehicle with a barrel bomb, which was pre-positioned during a raid in the area of Al-Nada Towers in northern Gaza Strip. And in Palestine, the Israeli armies attacked several areas in the Gaza Strip, killing 69 civilians in the last 24 hours. Israel continues its process of ethnic cleansing despite constant condemnation from the United Nations, which has called for a ceasefire on more than one occasion. Palestinian Foreign Ministry has warned that Israel's actions are aimed at crippling the movement of compatriots and dismembering the West Bank in order to undermine any chance of establishing a Palestinian state. And the Israeli regime once again targeted a United Nations safe haven school in the Gaza Strip. At least 20 Palestinians, including children, were killed in the attack and several were wounded. The Wafa news agency reported that the Israeli army shelled the Ahmed bin Abdul Aziz school, run by UNRWA, which was sheltering displaced families in southern Khan Yunis. According to testimonies, the building was full of children. The attack followed an assault on a school in northern Beit Hanun, in which 43 people were killed, and another on a civil defense post in which Al Jazeera cameraman Ahmed Alul and 5 rescue workers died. At least 44,926 civilians have been killed by Israel and more than 106,000 have been wounded since the beginning of the genocide in Gaza in October 2023.
They bombed the school, which was a shelter for children, and there were no resistance fighters or anything in it. They were all children, and we were sleeping. So why didn't they tell us to evacuate the school? How can they bomb a school?
And the Israeli regime approved a plan to increase the number of settlers in the Syrian Golan Heights illegally occupied since 1967. The decision comes days after seizing more Syrian territory following the overthrow of President Bashar al-Assad and the seizure of power in Damascus by extremist factions. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the government had unanimously approved the demographic development of the occupied territory, which would seek to double the Israeli population there. The new plan applies to the part of the Golan Heights that Israel has occupied since 1967 and where some 31,000 settlers live in dozens of illegal settlements. And the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, through a statement on his former Telegram channel, broadcasted as well by the Russian news agency TASS, declared that he remained in Damascus until the early hours of December 8th. Part of the statement states the following, quote, "I did not leave the country in a planned manner, as has been reported, nor did I do so in the last hours of the fighting. I remained in Damascus, fulfilled my responsibilities until the early hours of Sunday, December 8th, 2024. He continues explaining that Moscow requested the base command to organize an immediate evacuation to Russia, and the option of asylum or resignation was never considered, neither by him nor any person or entity related to him. Al-Assad followed reaffirmed that since the first day of the war, he refused to exchange the salvation of his homeland for personal benefits, and stood by the officers and soldiers of his army on the front lines at the most critical and dangerous points of combat. Al-Assad finished by saying, and quote, "This does not imply in any way a renunciation of my national and authentic belonging to Syria and its people. My commitment to Syria is unwavering regardless of any position or circumstance and is filled with hope for the return of a free and independent Syria," end quote. In other news, in Sudan, at least 38 people were killed after armed groups attacked the western town of El Fasher. According to local media, the systematic drone attack left 20 wounded, and the death toll is expected to rise. The International Committee of the Red Cross warned that the conflict could lead to disease outbreaks and the collapse of the country's health system. It is worth noting that the United Nations International Organization for Migration said that the number of internally displaced people in Sudan is more than 11 million. And leaders of the Economic Community of West African States met at a summit with 3 member countries led by military governments on the verge of leaving the bloc. On the eve of a meeting of the Economic Community of West African States, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger confirmed as irreversible their decision to leave the group, which they condemn as submissive to the former colonial master France. In a statement issued late Sunday, the president of ECOWAS Commission, Omar Touré, announced a grace period after 66th ordinary session of the Authority of Heads of States and Government of the regional organization, which was held in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. According to the Head of State Commission, the leaders of the bloc recognized that all 3 countries will officially cease to be members of ECOWAS as of January 29, 2025.
The authority decides to set the period from 29 January 2025 to 29 July 2025 as a transitional period and to keep ECOWAS doors open to the 3 countries during the transition period.
And on Monday, South Korea's ruling party president Han Dong-hoon resigned. The leader of the People Power Party announced his resignation amid growing political conflict following an impeachment motion in the National Assembly to remove President Yoon Suk-yeol. Han initially assured that he would continue to serve, but his stance changed after 5 members of the party's Supreme Council expressed their intention to resign. A serious political crisis erupted in the country after President Yoon Suk-yeol decreed the imposition of a short-lived martial law last December 3rd.
I am resigning from my position as the leader of the People's Power Party. The resignation of the Supreme Council members has destroyed the Supreme Council, making it impossible for me to carry out my normal duties as the leader of the party. I sincerely apologize to all the people who are suffering from this emergency situation.
The now former party leader admitted that bloodshed could have ensued if the martial law had not been lifted.
If we had not lifted the martial law that night, there could have been bloodshed between our citizens who would have taken to the streets and our young soldiers the following morning. That night, I was deeply afraid that I might not be able to prevent such a tragedy.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. With TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.